Thanks, Stephanie. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm excited to be here this afternoon to talk to you about ExamSoft and how we, as a school, went about structuring ourselves and getting ready to use ExamSoft literally in 3 months. Before I start, I just want to let you know if you've got questions, please make sure either use the chat box or you've got something that I'm not that you want me to hit on. Please tell me, and let's not make the end of the webinar the end of the discussion. If you want to get a hold of me, I'll put my contact information up at the end. Make sure that you get your questions answered. We can continue the discussion, however you want, but please make sure you get your questions answered. That's important. I don't have all the answers, but I certainly can provide you a point in the right direction, or at least share with you our experiences and what we did here at Bergen. Just a little bit about me, so you know where I'm coming from. I work at every place that I've learned. So I'm a graduate of Bergen Catholic, graduate of Iona, graduate of St. Peter's. Pretty much what I do at Bergen is I'm the tech guy. I run the laptop program, and I'm also the data guy. So I do the scheduling, the report card process. I set up things like ExamSoft and turn it in, and we use Naviance and all that stuff. So I'm the data guy back and forth. So ExamSoft, I kind of do a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff, but I also use it as a teacher when I teach AP Computer Science. Just a little bit about Bergen Catholic. We're an all-boys school, 9 to 12, 700 and roughly 45 boys and 60 teachers. We're that little blue dot. We are not in a New York suburb, but we are in New Jersey, about 20 minutes from New York City. And we're a college prep school, so roughly 99% to every senior attends college, the following fall when we graduate. We average a class size of around 22 and a half, and our tuition is approximately $16,000 a year. That does not include a laptop, other miscellaneous supplies. So, but our tuition itself is roughly right around $16,000 a year. Excuse me. How we started with one-to-one. We've been a one-to-one school since 2002. This is not something that's new to us, and technology is not something that's new to the kids nor the faculty. We used the faculty had laptops for a year by themselves before we introduced to the students. Then the following year in 2003-2004, we introduced the freshman class with an IBM ThinkPad, and that progressed over 4 years until 2006-2007, where every student had a different Lenovo model. That stayed the same until 2012-2013. We introduced the Lenovo tablet, which the kids could write on. We went through that. It was okay. And then in March 2013, we announced that we were going Apple in the 14-15 school year. In the 2012-2013 year, we introduced Google Apps to the student body. We gave them their own email account. We started really pushing the cloud with them, and that has been a persistent thing ever since. 13-14 for us was a big thing. We moved to Active Directory. We did a lot of infrastructure changes. We brought our faculty on board with iPads. We increased our bandwidth, so we really started preparing for the fact that we'd have Apples coming in March, or excuse me, in 14-15 school year. In 14-15, we went to a 2-to-1 environment. So our students, our freshmen, have both MacBooks and iPads. I'll show you that in a minute. We went Google Apps for the faculty. All our freshman textbooks were online. Now next year, all our textbooks for all 4 years will be online. We're working with the faculty to develop their own iBooks. Half of our school population will be Apple, so we'll have freshmen and sophomores. And we had an opportunity for the juniors and seniors to trade in their Lenovo's for Macs. So we've got a couple of them that are doing that. So by 17-18 will be the absolute latest point that everybody will have MacBooks and iPads. Will be a full Apple school at that point. Our freshmen, sophomores, and transfer students use an 11-inch MacBook Air and a 32 gig iPad Mini. The reason behind both devices is that even as adults we use the right tool at the right time. So maybe the laptop isn't appropriate when I'm trying to read read a novel or read through my textbook. So we have the iPad. The content creation piece happened on the laptop. We use the iPad as a reader, but we could also interchange depending on the situation. Our juniors and seniors right now have the 230 tablet. We also made sure that it was important that we have insurance on these things. The boys could be pretty rough with them, but we found that in general the MacBooks have been much better than the Lenovo's in terms of holding up and wear and tear. I do want to mention before I start talking about ExamSoft that I have a student tech team here at Bergen, which we've had in place for a number of years, and it's really helpful because it started with 1 to 2 kids after school in 2006, 2007, and it grew. This year I had 5 of them, and they work hard. They've got the respect of the faculty, and it shows that, you know, and I'm going to talk a lot when I talk about ExamSoft about how we share roles, how those kids can fix issues without having, you know, to wait for me to do things. And I think that's really important. They do important work. They don't do busy work, and they actually get paid. You know, it's not a service thing. It's not a you know, I just volunteer. They work for the school, and I have them, you know, working throughout the summer. They work on servicing laptops and getting ready for the next school year. And I think that's a really important component when I start to talk about how we supported ExamSoft. You'll see that that's a big component of it. Why we went to ExamSoft? Well, here's the question. A retired colleague had said this to me a while ago. Are we a laptop school, or are we a school that uses laptops? Right? And that was a really important question, and one that I still think about all the time. Are we a laptop school or a school that uses laptops? Now, we're not new to online testing. We were using ExamView for a number of years, and it just wasn't the way for us to go. We wanted something cloud-based. ExamView relied on don't get me wrong, ExamView is a good program. I'm not going to say that it's not. But we wanted to move in a different direction. They were going to have a cloud-based solution that didn't, you know, it didn't pan out in the time we wanted it to. But we really wanted to push online testing, and a good way for us to administer exams. You know, and the other thing that we really wanted to look at, and we're continuing to look at, is how do we assess? Why do we assess? And it's a question that I pose with my graduate students a lot. You know, why do we assess, and how do we assess? And is there a better way that we can assess? So you know, it wasn't just to let's get rid of the Scantrons. You know, it was let's really see how we assess. And I think that ExamSoft gives us the opportunity to do that. When I say we went, you know, we got our CBT on in 3 months. On February 24th, a bunch of us of this year, we went to St. Joe's by the Sea on Staten Island in New York, and we saw how they implemented the ExamSoft and how pleased they were with it. So we were able to do some creative budgeting. We got ourselves together. We started training on March 4th. So March 15th, we let the faculty go. We said, all right, you're going to have time to practice, to get yourselves together, because when we take our final exams this year, they will only be administered on ExamSoft. There will be no Scantrons, no paper. We're going to do purely online. Now, did that make people worry? Yeah. Did it cause anxiety? Absolutely. But we made sure that we took the right steps, that we're going to get there. A couple of the overarching themes that we thought about as we were implementing ExamSoft. Sharing is caring, and we made sure that that our teachers had the opportunity to work with one another, that those of us that our tech team were available. We realized that our teachers are pretty smart people, that they don't need a tech person or a computer person every time to help them with something with ExamSoft. That we did a lot of working together, and I'll talk about that in a minute. We also realized that if you know, people aren't moving towards something, they're moving away from it. And that kind of, you know, that's a powerful statement, because if you weren't moving towards ExamSoft and really wanting to do something different, then you had to be moving away from it. Right? As a tech team, we realized that we had to turn around laptops that were in service rather quickly. You know, we made sure that, you know, my student tech team made sure that if we got a laptop that was broken or didn't work right, it was a turnaround. It was diagnosed and disposed in 24 hours. We increased our loaner pool, which I'll talk about as well. We had to be as helpful as possible. And the thing that really was important to us was that if you had a problem with ExamSoft, it wasn't ExamSoft. You weren't going to blame ExamSoft or the technology for any issues. Now, that meant more work for my team. It meant more work, you know, on our part in terms of getting the faculty up to speed. But you weren't going to say, oh, ExamSoft doesn't work, or you weren't going to say that my laptop doesn't work, or our infrastructure doesn't work. You know, everything had to be, in my eyes, perfect to make sure that this went off without a hitch, and we knew that going forward. So I want to talk about two areas. First, about what we did with our faculty, and some strategies with the faculty, and then I want to talk about our game day, what we did in terms of our final exams. So when we did the training, when we did the initial webinars with ExamSoft, we did 2 people per department. We had our tech team, 2 teachers per department. There were a bunch of people that got on and learned how to do this. So they were hopefully going to be the turnaround folks that would help people in their department. They would be resources for other teachers. What we did, we set up a student account for each teacher so that they could go on. We didn't want them just to be able to preview their test, but we wanted them to feel exactly how a student would. So from the initial log on to taking the test to looking at the portal afterwards, what information will I see, will I not see, how does this work? We really wanted them to get the full feel of the software. So we gave them all teacher accounts. We just took we put the word FAC or FAC in front of their ID number so that they could log on as a student and really get a feel for this. Then we had them take school created practice tests, again, so they could start off, let me see as a student, how does the software work? And then we went to, why don't you create a practice test for yourself and take it as a student? Okay? And then we said, once you feel comfortable with that, let's try it with your class. Okay? Now the idea with this was make a practice test, whatever your content area was, but take it with them. Don't penalize the kids the first time around. So, because this stuff is all new to them too. The idea is that everyone's learning together, that the kids, the teachers, here's a test. It's not going to count, it's not going to penalize against you. As a teacher, I might say, well, it'll be a 10-point quiz. Everybody gets a 10 out of 10 just for trying. But let's try the software. Let's see how you get in. Let's see how you answer a question. Let's see how, when you finish, how do you submit, all that kind of stuff. Then let's also, if there are any issues that come up with that. Are there any issues with, submitting your test or answering a question, all that kind of stuff. So once we practice, it's like, how do we gradually incorporate into the curriculum? So by the time we get to a final exam, this is all the kids know. And they're not going to know anything different. They're not going to be thinking about, I need a pencil to take my Scantron test. But how do I know that I need to have my laptop together or my iPad and it's ready to go. Because we're still 2 different platforms with our devices, we use soft test both on the iPad and we use it on the laptop. So this year they kind of had a choice in terms of how they took the test, but going forward, all the kids that are have Apple devices will only use it on the iPad. We also encouraged the teachers to take each other's tests. If I'm in the same department as my buddy, make me a student in your class so that I can take your test to look for mistakes, if there's anything issues with the questions. It's not like we could take an exam from 10 years ago, Xerox it, or cut and paste, and I have a test that may not be numbered correctly or have typographical errors. We encourage the teachers to take each other's tests. And that cut down a lot on, wait a minute, there's 5 questions are labeled number 37, and they don't have the right answers to them. So that was huge. All this stuff here was, I think, our recipe or our steps, how we were successful. Again, making sure, recognizing that our faculty are smart people, recognizing that sharing is the way to go. How we supported them, and I think this was key. We did class push-in. So I had a teacher come to me and say, I've got my test ready. I want to give the kids their first quiz, but would you be there for the first couple of minutes to help me? Absolutely. So I come in, the teacher's giving the directions and all that kind of stuff. I'm making sure that the kids are in guided access on their iPads. They've downloaded the test. They're waiting for the password from the teacher. And then once the kids were on, I'm done. Like, I can just kind of, I'm leaving because they're good to go, because the only thing I have left to do is submit. I might stay. In some cases, I would stay for the entire period and make sure that the kids submitted the test properly, or stand there with the teacher, and the teacher would check the submissions, and I'm just there to make sure if the teacher had any problems. And it was a comfort blanket, which was fine, because that's what we wanted, to make sure that there were no excuses. And that there was every option available for these teachers. We did a lot of one-on-one coaching. Those of us that went through the training would sit down with other teachers if they needed specific questions. I know we had some questions, let's say, well, with math, and I'll show you that in a minute. Or, well, how do I do this in my class? This is what I want to do. The other thing, when I said sharing is caring, we had teachers sit in on other teachers' classes. Now, this, for the kids, some of them were really surprised when we said, I might have Mrs. Smith sitting in my class today because she's going to look at how I administer a test. Okay, for me, for the kids, it's a great way, to see that the faculty's modeling learning from other people, from peer-to-peer learning. The teachers learn too, and we're learning from one another. And then I had said to my class, if this teacher who's observing the class has a question, please answer the question for them. If they ask you, well, how do you navigate between questions, or how do you type in an answer, show them how to do that. And I think the faculty found this pretty helpful because it was, let's see how it works in an actual live context. We're not doing it in a practice context with a bunch of other teachers. It's in a real classroom. And again, promoted collegiality. It promoted that, if we all share and we kind of help one another, we're going to make this successful. I would send out periodic email reminders, and I would, target specific things. So, for example, one of the things we had, the download and upload time. We had teachers that would set the download time. There was like a 10-minute window to download the test. Or, upload time. If you didn't upload, by the end of the period, you couldn't upload. So I would send them some directions with some screenshots. Maybe next year we're hoping to work on some videos specific to our institution so that they can watch them and see, this is how I do X. Because there are some skills that, we saw right away, like I said, the upload and download time. That was a problem initially. I'd have 20 kids in my office going, I can't upload my test. Well, once I, extended the upload time, there wasn't a problem. Right? The other thing that we shared with some folks were sample questions. Some people would say, well, how do I put a question in in ExamSoft? How do I put in I've got a graph, let's say, like this. I've got a math question. Okay. I made this question myself. I didn't write it because I'm not that smart, but I did this was a graph. It's a screenshot of a generated test. Okay, so we had a test generator that generates a PDF file with a test in it. So I took the angle and the directions, I screenshot that, imported it as an image file, and then I used the math editor for the actual answers. So it looks, that this is something that, maybe yesterday was, well, how do I do this? How do I put this on a, how do I put it on a, into ExamSoft as a question, and now it's, oh, I can do this. I don't have to worry about, changing the style of my questions and whatnot. I can take questions from other spots and just, copy and paste them and put them in. And this was the kind of modeling, if I showed a teacher, oh, this is how you can do this, then they could show somebody else, or, and this wasn't only good for math, it was helpful in science, even in world languages, where, the language and some of the characters and stuff were important. You could do the same kind of thing. So it was, once we kind of planted that seed, it was, oh wow, this is kind of pretty cool, and it kind of went from there. The other thing that we tried to encourage, we didn't do a lot of it this year, but we're hoping to next year, in terms of higher order thinking. And going back to my question of how we assess. I teach AP computer science, so this is a question about recursion. Now I could, on a Bloom's taxonomy scale, say, which of the following best describes the concept of recursion? Okay, and that's nice, and that would, that would be a basic test if you know what recursion is. But in terms of a higher level, I could put in a piece of code here that says, what's the output of the following method? Okay, so I'm testing at a higher level. I'm forcing the kids to think at a level that's a little bit more intensive than just a simpler level. So this whole process I can look at, and we encourage our teachers to look at all the questions you ask. And are these the right questions you want to ask? Are you asking the right questions? Are you asking questions that are primarily lower level? And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but is there a better way to ask these questions? Do you want to potentially take those questions to a higher level and ask something that requires more creative thought? And this is still a multiple choice question. I can make it multiple choice. I can make it, fill in the blank. However, but it at least gave our teachers some thought. Let's look at all these questions you've accumulated for how long you've been teaching, are they the right questions you want to ask? And, and some of mine I found that, like, these are, I definitely was able to distinguish between the lower level ones and the higher level ones. And I really want to push the higher level questions because this, to me, I could get a better idea if a kid understands recursion as opposed to which of the following best describes the concepts of recursion. So this was one of the things, we try to, an overarching thing we looked at too is let's look at all our questions, all our assessments. Are they good? Do we need to find new ones? And if so, then how do we go about finding those type of questions? Or do we have to write our own? Do we need to take some time to write our own questions? So we get to March 15th, ready, set, download. We said to all the students, we're going to at least get everybody on. We want you to download soft test. We then found out after about 45 seconds that it just brought our network to a standstill. No one could get on. None of us could understand why they couldn't get on. We then found out at that point that our content filter and our firewall, both Cisco, couldn't handle our web traffic. They were outdated and misconfigured. So we put in these two devices, the Barracuda content filter and firewall, 5 days before our senior exams, and not a moment too soon, because we did not have any other issues moving forward with our infrastructure. We wanted to make sure, again, that when a kid logs on and takes their test, there wasn't going to be an issue in terms of I can't get on, I can't download my test, I can't upload my test. So this was important, and we did it just in the nick of time. So it's worth me mentioning because, we weren't going to run the risk of we've got 200 kids waiting to take a test and they can't get on the internet to get the test. So this was a critical piece of how we did things. So the way we used to do, now we do as a Catholic school, our seniors finish a couple of days early, or maybe like 2 or 3 weeks earlier than the underclassmen. They take their final exams first. So while the underclassmen are still in class, the seniors are taking final exams. So this is how we used to, they would take their test. They would take a 4-day period after the seniors finish their classes. This is like the end of May. They take their exams by subject. So the first 2 periods on Monday, they take English, then they take math in periods 3 and 4, so forth and so on. They could be absent. They could be exempt if they had fewer than 6 absences, so less than or equal to 5 absences, and a second semester average of at least a 93. They could get exempt. Now, problems with this model, it's a pain to schedule, to try and figure out, well, I've got a senior class in room 1 first period. There's an underclassman class in room 1 second period. I got to move them because the seniors need 2 periods to take their test. If you've got kids with conflict, so if I take like 2 maths or 2 sciences on the same day, when do I take the makeup test? Where does it have to be? Who's going to proctor it? It's a lot of work to try and figure all this stuff out. And I'm not even the one that's responsible for scheduling, but I can say that it's a lot of work. So as we're starting to look at, we've got ExamSoft, we're trying to figure out, well, how do we do this potentially in a different way? Now, we have a modular, a rotating drop schedule. So it looks like this. So my class that meets on day 1, period 1, will not meet again until day 3, period 6. Then it rotates up. So we started floating around the question, well, what if we schedule exams by period? Rather than doing it by subject area, what if we say on the first day of exams you take your day 1, period 1 test and then your day 1, period 2 class? And it didn't matter how we scramble this, but over a 4-day period, we could do 2 exams per day, and then the last exam would be any makeups or conflicts or whatever. Now, this is revolutionary. I graduated from Bergen Catholic in 1995, and for the 4 years prior to that, we took our exams by subject area. So this was a totally new thing for us. It was, it was unheard of, but we kind of committed, let's try this and let's see if it works, and then moving forward, it's something we could do, we could do every year. So this year's senior class, 215 kids, and our initial thought was, okay, well, how do we schedule the rooms? We put them all in the gym, and this is what we did. We put 215 kids in the gym. Now you can see that's me in the pink shirt with the big arrow. Our biggest concerns were Wi-Fi. We've got 1 access point in there. Can we handle it? Absolutely, because the ExamSoft traffic wasn't taking a lot. The tests weren't that big. We told all the kids to download their tests before their exam day, and all their teachers made sure that all the tests were downloaded. So pretty much the idea was you walk into that gym and say to your teacher, "Give me my password. I'm ready to go." So everything's downloaded, no issues. Now, power. Our Lenovo's needed. The batteries aren't what the MacBooks are. So what we did, I'll show you this, the next slide, how we did with the power. We bought a big, in essence, big power strips. So that wasn't an issue. And what we did, because this was so new, now the teachers, the classroom teachers were there proctoring their particular classes. So you have, one class is over here, one's over here. Every couple of tables was a different class. We verified, the tech support folks in this middle table, we verified that every exam was submitted. Okay, because the teachers, really for the teachers that didn't know exactly how to do that or weren't comfortable, we made sure everything was submitted. So no kid left that gym without submitting a test. That gave the teachers a degree of comfort, and I think that was, that was a nice selling point. The other thing that was good with this setup, and I've got a teacher over here, I got a teacher over here, I've got potentially anywhere from 7 to 10 teachers plus the tech people in the middle. We're watching for wandering eyes. We're watching for anything in terms of academic dishonesty. There wasn't any, but now I've got 10 sets of eyes monitoring the room that ordinarily I might have one set of eyes. Okay, so that was a big plus too. A kid who, well, we might say, well, look, these two kids right here are sitting next to each other. They could be looking, but I've got teacher, 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 and there wasn't an issue in terms of that. So that was I like the setup. If I could fit 745 kids in the gym, I would do it. I think this was a great way to do our senior exams. In terms of the power, this is what we used. We found them on Amazon for roughly $30. There are these long strips with 12 outlets and a nice long cable. So we use these in the classrooms for the underclassmen exams, but in the gym we just put them down. We put some tape on the cables, and again, well, my battery is dead. Well, you can plug in and charge. There was ample opportunity to charge. We didn't have any issues with the power. We made sure of that beforehand. But power wasn't going to be a problem. We knew with the Lenovo's, if you were taking 2 exams, you weren't going to have enough battery to last you 4 hours. So this was our solution, and they work fabulous. No major issues at all. So after we did our senior exams, we debriefed. Okay, what went well, what didn't go well. The biggest problem we had was kids with loaners and requiring additional uploads. So we told them, like I said before, download before the exam starts. But if you had a legitimate hardware or software problem, if something happened to your computer between the time you downloaded and the time you started the test, you need another download. If you forgot your laptop at home, we had a couple of those. We made sure we had loaners available. Again, we're not going to blame ExamSoft, or we're not going to blame the technology. We had loaners available. Those machines, the kids were given loaners, and right away we would diagnose and work on repairing those machines. That probably, and even with the underclassmen, was the biggest issue was additional uploads. The kids got one upload. If they needed a second one, we would boost that. The teachers that were comfortable doing that did it on their own. If they didn't, they came to the table and said, I can't download my test, and we took care of it right away. Students with extended time, we put them in the library for their entire test time. So this way, if they had time and a half or double time, whatever the case was, they were in one location. They weren't in the gym for a part of it and then going up to the learning center for another part of it. They were in their one space for the entire time. There were a couple kids that, for whatever reason, couldn't get on the Wi-Fi to post their exam. Very few. So in my office, I had unfiltered access set up, so they would just plug in their laptop, and they wouldn't be, they'd get right on the internet, and they were able to upload their test without any issues. One of the things we did find, though, that faculty who, when they didn't post their exam in the same folder, or they didn't use a unique name, and that's something we have to work on for next year. I had a couple teachers call their final exam, and when the kids go to download it, they didn't know whose they were downloading. Or they would, I'm looking for their test because I might have to up a download or, change their upload time or whatever the case is, and I can't find it because it's in a folder where I would never look for it. So one of the things we're going to look at, for next year is how do we organize our folders so that I know that under your under your teacher name, you've got a folder that Final Exam 2016, and all your exams are there. We didn't have any lost exams. You know, in the past where you did it on paper, a proctor did the test. Our teachers didn't proctor their own tests. We had proctors do it, so there could have been a lost test. Had none of that. No shenanigans whatsoever. The kids were honest. They were on task, doing what they should have been. There was no opportunity for them to do anything otherwise, by virtue of the fact they were being watched by 10 people. So it worked well. We didn't have any major problems with the apps. Actually, I didn't say any major problems. We didn't have any problems. Let me make that clear. There wasn't any, oh, this was the problem. We learned some stuff, but nothing that we would classify as a problem. Kids that were absent, we would repost the test. We would force them. We would force the teachers to use a download password if they didn't use one, or a different one if they had one, so that kid had to download the test in person immediately before the test. There's a different assessment password, and then we were toying with how to post it, either in a makeup folder or whatever the case was. That we're still kind of trying to feel that one out. But the big thing was that you had to download your test in person if you were absent. And if you were absent and had it already, you couldn't start taking it without a new password. Our concern was that maybe absent kids would get the password and do the test. We found a thing with ExamSoft, and the tech support folks at ExamSoft were fabulous. The clock wasn't adjusting when you resumed, so you go into the test, you take 10 minutes, I take a picture of every question, and then when I go back in a day later, I still have an hour and I have to take my test. So with ExamSoft's help, we were able to, at least the clock now runs down regardless of if your machine's in standby or not. It won't prompt for the Zoom code, but at least it will show us that a kid went on before they should have. And by the way, we didn't have any issues with this stuff. There were no kids that went on and looked at the test ahead of time. There were no kids that were trying to pull any of this stuff because we knew the kids that weren't there, when they showed up for their makeup test, we'd go through and check their logs and whatnot more thoroughly. So our senior exams went off without a hitch. Then it came time for underclassmen. Now the old way, and this is for the 560 roughly kids we had left in the building. We would same thing. We would schedule half of two different classes in the same room. So English 1 CP and English 2 CP are in the same room, half and half. You'd be assigned a proctor. It wouldn't be your own teacher proctoring your test. On the first day, English, math, whatever. You had to provide the proctor with an envelope with your exams in it, scrap, essay paper. There's always an issue. Well, if I would give 20 tests, I got 18 back because 2 of them ended up in another folder in another class. When do I take a makeup? When is it scheduled? It's a scheduling nightmare to try and schedule this stuff. But again, we've been doing it like this for at least 25 years. So now with ExamSoft, we say, okay, we're going to do it by period again. Same thing, 1 exam per day, and then one day we did a double. And it didn't matter how we rotated it. We made sure that, at Bergen, you take 7 classes. One of those classes is your general period, your gym, computers, art, whatever. So you don't have a final exam in that class. You didn't get to come to school that day. You had a day off, a study day, a reading day, whatever you want to call it. We juggled around where's going to be the impact of, what kids are going to get a day off when, but that wasn't a big deal. We centrally located tech support. We had a table in the hallway, so if we had issues with kids, again, it was uploads. We didn't have any major issues at all. It was basically I need another upload because my computer, something happened to my computer. I think I might have had one issue that was weird. It was some kind of license thing with ExamSoft. I'd never seen it before. Got the kid a loaner. We actually re-imaged his computer by the time he's done with his first test. So by the time he took his second test, he had his own computer back. There wasn't anything major. I can't even, I could try and say, well, that could have been a major issue, but we didn't have anything major. There were none. We were kind of waiting for cautiously where's going to be the big problem that no one saw coming. There weren't. Kids came in, they took their tests, they went home. We got some of our faculty were like, wow, this is really cool. I really thought it was going to be bad, but this is really cool. I like it. So it was really cool to see that kind of stuff. we did have, I had a student come in my office and say to me, my exam just randomly stopped, and ExamSoft closed for no reason, and I wasn't done, so we went to the logs, and it really didn't randomly close. You were timed out at 10:43 and 19 seconds. And the kid kind of stood there and looked at me dumbfounded, because there was nowhere he could go with this, because those logs are so detailed that I know exactly what you were doing. 2 seconds before that, you were on a question, but then you timed out, you had your time, and this is what happened. So your ExamSoft randomly closing? No, not really. I had a child tell me that his computer randomly turned off. We looked. Sorry, no, your device had 5% or less battery at 10:30 and 6 seconds, and at 10:32 and 29 seconds, actually at 10:32 and 25, excuse me, your computer went to sleep because your battery ran out. So my computer randomly turned off? No, sorry, it didn't. And once maybe like 3 or 4 kids had these type of issues, they went away real quick. In terms of, oh, maybe if I tell Mr. Spiegel that my computer did this. Once they knew that the logs were out there, I said before, no shenanigans. There were no shenanigans, because the log defended. It's amazing how much these logs hold in terms of good information. In terms of our classrooms for the underclassmen, the way we set things up, we had the teacher was really creative. This was one that I kind of liked. They put the kids facing each other down the middle, 2 rows of that, and then they had the one group over here that was against the wall, because you can't see it, but there's a wall right here. There were couple kids over here, so they were creative in how they laid out the room. This one I liked just as much, because it was let's put the 2 kids face to face, like Battleship almost. You had all these kids playing Battleship, so and if a kid was looking from one desk to another, there was enough space that it really they would have to strain to do it. So that worked out real well. Now, in terms of printing tests, this was, I think, like my if there was a stat that could say how powerful using online testing was. In May of 2014, now this isn't really scientific, but in May of 2014, our faculty printed 92,096 pages in the month of May in 2014. So getting ready to, getting their exams copied and whatnot, getting them ready. This year, we printed 15,000 pages. It was almost 77,000 pages less. 153 reams of paper we saved by going online with our tests. When I looked at this, I did it 3 times to make sure. I had someone else look at it too to make sure that the numbers were right. 77,000 fewer pages in 1 month using ExamSoft. It's 153 reams of paper. That's 15 cases of paper we saved by going this route. Because our teachers, even though we administered our exams for the underclassmen in June, pretty much everybody is preparing them in May, putting them in envelopes and whatnot. So we really made out well from a printing standpoint of how much paper we didn't use, how much toner we didn't use, how much aggravation we saved by faculty going to, standing at the copy machine, waiting for copies that didn't staple right, oh, I got to print it again and whatnot. This was a real telltale sign that we did something, I dare say, right. Now, for next year, some of the stuff we'd like to look at. I alluded to this before. Our questions, looking at all the questions we're using, higher order thinking, our folder organization. Do we write new questions, clean up the old questions? Let's look at every question that we use for assessment and see if it's good. The idea of creating an assessment portfolio so that the kids can, if we administer every quiz, every test, every exam on ExamSoft, there's a great way to study for our midterm and final exams. All our stuff is in one spot. I don't have to, where's my test from, 2 months ago? I want to study for that, or I want to use that to study for something else. It's an assessment portfolio, and we're hoping that maybe we can grow that. I'm a big data guy, and I think that there's a ton of analytical stuff that we could use within ExamSoft to make curricular decisions. For example, why did 20 students get this question wrong? Now, I can look at the breakdown by student and whatnot. That's one from a question standpoint. Why did so many kids get the question wrong? Not 20 kids did get it wrong. Why did they get it wrong? Did they all choose the same response? Were they fooled by a certain response? And then I can target my instruction based on, on those specific questions. The other thing I think we should look at is in terms of our exam taker data. How long do students take the test? How do they take it? Do they go from 1 to 20? Do they skip around? Do they answer the questions they know first, then go back? How much time do they spend per question? Do questions that I think might be easy, kids are spending 2, 3, 4 minutes on a question, and if that's the class average, maybe I need to revisit that question. Does every student finish with the test within allotted time? Am I writing tests that are too hard or too easy? So just as much as there's question data that's available, I think we need to look at exam taker data so we get a better idea of our exam takers and how they behave in terms of, how they take the tests, how much time they're taking, and it's almost like, looking at shopping data from a marketing standpoint. I'm looking at it from an exam taker standpoint. And then some of those advanced features like rubrics and whatnot, maybe getting into them would be nice, in 15, 16. So I think we've got, our work cut out for us. I want to say that I'm going to put on my contact information, but I want to say a couple of things. It wasn't difficult. As much as this might look like a lot of work, it really wasn't. We had a dedicated group of people that really bought into this early on and were able to help out one another. We understood the goal. This is where we want to go. And standing in that gym and watching 215 kids take a test and not having issues of I lost my test, I couldn't get on, there were no excuses. It really was a solid thing. And, if you told me in February that we're going to do it for finals, even me as a tech guy, I was kind of, that's kind of that's a short amount of time. But you know what? I think in the end, it really was worth it. Our faculty was bought on. I know they're excited about using it next year. Did it cause some anxiety? Sure. Did it cause some people to kind of, to fight us a little bit? Yeah. Everyone just didn't jump on board. But as they started to see it, I think we won over even some of the people that were naysayers going, this is, I'm not using this. To then, oh, this really wasn't so bad. And I think that really helped. And then as people started talking to one another, it's, oh, you know what, it really isn't that bad. And knowing that they had support available, whether it was my computer, whether it was I don't know how to check to make sure the kid, took the test, whatever the case was, it was serves with a smile. There was people there to help them, and I think that was key because if we didn't do that, this wouldn't have worked at all. So I'm glad that we were able to do that. I'm certainly looking forward to doing it next year. That's pretty much what I wanted to kind of share with you, but I do want to make sure that you've got time to ask me questions. So I'm going to stop talking, which, hear applause. Please, if you've got questions, ask me questions, however you want to ask me questions. I should say, too, if you all of a sudden think of a question in an hour, send me an email. If you want to talk one-on-one, that's fine. Or if you've got a group of people you want to talk to, we do a little hangout, do FaceTime, that's fine. I want you to get your questions answered. I want you to talk to somebody who's done it, who could give you, if you've got a specific issue, I'm trying to do X, Y, or Z. Let's talk about it. I was very grateful when we went to St. Joseph's in February that we were able to see this stuff and really get our questions answered, and I want to pay that forward. So if you've got questions or concerns, there's my contact information. Please make sure you get in touch with me. Whatever I can do to help you out is certainly I will do that. So I think that's it. Certainly. So I think Stephanie is somewhere in cyberspace, and if she wants to, if you want to chime in and take questions or whatever, wherever we need to go, I'm standing by.
Sounds great, Al. Thank you so much for the presentation. As Al said, we're going to go ahead and open up the forum for a Q&A. Just as a reminder, if you do have a question for Al, now is a good time to type it into the questions area of the GoToWebinar control panel. Should be on the right-hand side of your screen. We already have a couple waiting for us, so we're going to go ahead and jump in. But if you do have one, go ahead and pose it now. So Al, the first question is, so there's no need for internet during the actual exam, is that correct?
During the actual exam, you don't need internet. You need internet beforehand to download the test, and then after the test to upload it. During the test, if you're using the iPad, you've got to put the iPad in airplane mode and in guided access. So ExamSoft test is the only thing you can use. And what I will say is that I asked some of my smart kids, I said, all right, jailbreak your iPad and try to take a test on ExamSoft. And they couldn't do it. I said, break it. Find a way. Here's a practice test. Find a way to hack this test and get in. And they couldn't. And I think that was also a reassuring thing that I can say to the faculty. Hey, I had kids jailbreak it. I had these kids that are smarter than I am go in and try and hack the test, and they couldn't do it. But specifically for the test, you do not need internet. You just need it before and after. It lends itself nice to if they're gonna, if you're gonna do something, an assessment at home where they might necessarily have internet connection or internet connectivity, they can upload it as soon as they get back on the internet. They'll upload the test.
Great, thank you. And this is kind of a follow-up question, but does this work on any other platform besides laptops?
I've seen it'll work on a Windows-based machine, and it's primarily made for an iOS device, but it'll work on OS X, a Mac OS or Windows. There's no Android app or anything else, but it's primarily built for the iPad. So and it works. I think it works best on the iPad. The only thing that I've heard, I don't want to say grumblings, but if I'm typing an essay, if I'm taking an essay test, typing it on the iPad on the screen itself is a little. I might not be able to type as fast, but we're going to try next year. We'll let the kids bring like a Bluetooth keyboard if they want to use that for the iPad. I don't think that's a big deal. But yeah, iPad is the way to go.
Yeah, and just to clarify, the software works on any type of lab, like a computer lab, desktop computer, Mac or PC laptops, and then iPads and Surface Pro devices is what it's available on currently. Next question is, how did you hear about the system? Do you have advice for board approval / purchasing?
We heard about it, actually, believe it or not, from our Apple account rep. We met with her in, I think, January. I don't know exactly the time. I know we heard about it from Apple. They said, oh, you got to see St. Joseph's by the Sea on Staten Island, because they do this, and this is how they test. And they're a one-to-one iPad school. So we had called them up, and we went to see it. And I honestly, I think on the way back, we were so impressed with how clean it was and how it was. We said we got to do this, and in terms of board approval and whatnot, we're not going to, and it might sound raw, but here it comes. We can't, if we're going to be a laptop school, we can't use second best, and we can't do things that aren't 21st century. We're a 21st century school, and we can't do that if we're still giving paper tests, and we can't do that if we're still, if we're telling kids turn off your laptops and that kind of thing, or put them away. I think showing it, demonstrating it, but not me demonstrating it. Let me give you a test. If you've got the capability to give your board, here's an iPad and let's take a test on it. And even better, having that demonstrated by teachers and having students help them to show them that it's really going back to the sharing is caring and collegiality. It's one thing if me as the tech guy shows it, but if you've got the kids in there and the board's actually taking a test on the software on the iPad, it's great. I would also say if you're a BYOD school and you're using iPads, this is it gives the board a nice idea of, oh, this is how it would be if I brought in my iPad. It would work. Or even better, if they have an iPad, let them use it too. But I think it comes best when it comes from the teachers and the students, not from the tech guy.
Awesome. Next question is, again, a little bit of a follow-up. Was there any pushback from parents?
None. I mean, I don't want to say none, but nothing that came to my attention. Nothing in terms of, what we anticipated was, well, my kid, the computer died in the middle of the test, or I didn't get enough time, or whatever the case is. But nothing that got as far as me. If there were issues, they were handled with the classroom teacher. But I certainly didn't hear anything of, I did get what we we really started reminding these kids probably around April 1st, your laptop, your devices, I keep saying laptop, your devices have to work for final exams. You cannot have a broken machine or a machine that doesn't work. And every day, we hammered that home, every teacher, hey, it's got to work, there's no issues. And I think then the parents realize that, they're I want to, let me answer it this way. I didn't get any complaints from parents, but I got a little bit more volume in terms of, hey, is my kid's laptop ready? He's got a problem. Can he come and see you tomorrow morning? I started to see more of that because the kids, they really need it to take a test. And there's, if the learner pool is gone, then they need something. So I got it in that regard of, oh, is my kid's laptop, going to work? Or when is it going to be fixed? But I didn't get any complaints from the parents in terms of, oh, this doesn't work. This is awful. My kid got screwed out of points. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. It worked, it worked the way it should.
Okay, last question that we have in the queue for the moment is, what was the faculty buy-in process like?
We didn't go with the textbook way of change management. And at first I was kind of leery myself, but we went, this is how it's going to be. We're going to help you get there, but this is how it's going to be. And it took them a while. Again, some bought in right away because people that were using ExamView, it was just a natural transition. Some people, one of the things I would have loved to highlight was a teacher in our oral language department. Traditionally, they would give a listening portion of their exam before the actual final exam, and then the teacher would read out something, a paragraph, and the kids would have to answer questions. She actually recorded all that and embedded it into ExamSoft. So the kids sat there at their headphones and they took their listening part of their exam. So all of a sudden it was like, oh, this is really cool. Did it take me 5 days to get that to work? Yeah, but now that I've got that skill, it was like, oh, this is great. I can give formative assessments like this during the school year rather than waiting for the one summative one with listening. I can do this periodically now. So some of them bought in. Some of them, it was a struggle. I'm not going to lie. Everyone just didn't just jump at this, but there were some that, it was a fight. And there are probably people that are convinced this is not the way to go. But how are we going to prepare kids for the 21st century? If we're a college prep school, if we're preparing them to do anything that requires a certification past high school, they're going to take that test on a computer. How do we get them ready for that? And I just think this was a great way to do it. And we made enemies, but if you're looking at the institution as a whole, what's the best thing for the institution as a whole? It was to go in this direction. And we supported the faculty. Don't get me wrong, but it was just we weren't going to remain stagnant because of the concerns of 2 or 3 people. We were moving forward.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Al. We really appreciate your presentation. We're going to go ahead and wrap things up, folks. We'd like to thank all of you for taking time out of what I know is a very busy time of the year. Everybody's getting ready for the fall semester. Thank you for being here. We appreciate your attendance. Just as a reminder, when you do X out of the webinar today, you will get a pop-up with a 5-question survey. We would really appreciate anybody taking the time to fill that out if at all possible. And we do have actually a bunch of upcoming webinars in the next couple of weeks. So when you get a chance, visit us at examsoft.com/resources and take a look at what we have coming up to see if there's anything that you'd like to register for. You will receive an email in the next couple of days that will have a link to the recording to this webinar, so feel free to share that as you would like. Again, I'd just like to say thank you to everybody for being here. Thank you, Al, for your wonderful presentation, and we will see you next time.
Thanks, Stephanie.